We often get the impression that if I'm doing work on myself, if I'm doing inner work, um, conscious work, or however we might want to phrase it, that this is a kind of special, high-powered kind of a thing, and that it definitely involves some kind of special knowledge or some kind of thing that's been handed on to us, some kind of um, gimmick or gizmo. And all of this is self-defeating glamorization of something which shouldn't be glamorized. So we love to glamorize everything, but as soon as we glamorize, we turn it into ideals. We turn it into the world of our thoughts. Like, oh, this should be like this, that should be like that, and we don't realize that we've gone out of the nitty-gritty of everyday life into the idealized world, the glamorized world of our hopes and fears. So, really, what we absolutely know about doing conscious work is that we don't have to go seeking special situations, but that it's all to do with how we are in our lives as they are in the situation that's actually there, the everyday situation, the situation that isn't um, glamorous or special or anything like that. So basically, we're just living our lives exactly as life happens to us or presents itself to us. And there's no thought of somehow turning that experience, that um, everyday life, the experience of everyday life, turning it into a profit. It's not like I'm thinking, okay, I'm going through this, that's good. I'm going through a hard time, that's good. I can, that will be of use to me, because that's just the mind trying to see an advantage in every situation. Because when it does that, it feels better. It can say, okay, I'm going to get something out of it. This it's worthwhile in some way. And as long as the thinking mind is in charge, it's always going to be orientated towards advantage, because that's what it is. It is a machine for sniffing out the advantage. Doesn't matter what advantage, as long as there is a advantage, the thinking mind can get to work. If there's no question of there being either an advantage or disadvantage, then there's absolutely nothing for the thinking mind to do. There's nothing for it to work with. It cannot actually exist in a situation where there is no advantage to be strived for. And ultimately, there isn't any advantage. Ultimately, we imagine that there's going to be an advantage, and that imagined advantage is enough for a thought to start kicking in and doing its thing. So, being real or doing inner work, and almost any term we put on it tends to make it sound special. We don't want to do that, because it's no more special than anything is. It's no more special than eating a slice of toast or going to the toilet or anything like that. It's not a special thing. It's nothing to excite the mind. The mind can't rub its hands together and say, oh, this is the good stuff, which it dearly loves to do. That's all it can do. Either it rubs its hands together and say, here's the good stuff, or it does the inverse of this and laments and says, oh no, the bad thing, look at the bad thing is happening. Advantage, disadvantage, that's all the thinking mind can ever understand. So when we're talking about actually working with a situation in a conscious way, rather than being hijacked by it or controlled by it or um, rendered unconscious by it, psychologically unconscious, so we just go along with the pattern that is unfolding, we stay aware We stay aware of what's going on, not for an advantage. I can't stay aware for an advantage. And I can't stay aware because someone tells me if I'm not aware, they're going to sneak up behind me and belt me. There's no extrinsic motivation involved in being aware. What there is actually the interest in what's going on right now without regard to whether it benefits me or not. I mean, that is supremely uninteresting from the point of view of actually being conscious. So when we've managed to step back out of the cage, which is a thinking mind, and just notice stuff in what is really a childlike or spontaneous way rather than an adult-like and controlling way, then we will see that we're not in the world to turn a profit from it. We're in the world, and that's interesting because we don't know what the world is and we don't know what we are. So that's interesting. And it's not that we're looking for an answer either, because then the answer comes and I get some dumb, dogmatic formula to explain everything. Then I'm not interested anymore. So what that means, if I'm interested in finding a formula or a final explanation, I'm not really interested in my situation. I'm interested in going back to sleep again. I'm interested in closing the book. And I'm interested in not having to be interested. I'm interested in being in that state where I'm not at all interested, but just going through the motions of routine existence without having any interest in what on earth routine existence means. So having said all this, it's kind of all fine and dandy. And it's kind of, we know it already. Okay, so we know to stay awake, pay attention, observe what's going on, don't get swallowed up by it. So we know that, but when it comes down to it, we always do get swallowed up. That's what happens. The precedence of being swallowed up by the drama is so great, so huge, that my little kind of whatever it is that I've got, a little intention to stay awake or an interest in staying awake, gets swamped every time. And yet we can't give any mechanical description of how to be an observer, how to actually be interested in observing our life as it happens, rather than constantly wondering, is it going in a good direction or a bad direction? Am I going to be a success or am I going to be a loser? All that type of bullshit. But there is, even though we can't have a mechanical guide or a kind of strategy, what we can have is a kind of refinement of perception. And the refinement of perception that we need is the refinement or subtlety of perception that is needed to spot our own aggression. If I can't spot my own aggression and see it for what it is, then I am controlled by the aggression. I'm not actually present. There is only aggression. Because if I'm aggressive, if I'm aggressive, what this really means in psychological terms is that I'm trying to reach a goal. And I'll move heaven and earth to get that goal. I'll manipulate in order to get that goal. And aggression also means that I'm trying to, it could mean that I'm trying to get away from a feared outcome. When there's a feared outcome there, then I try really hard to get away from it, of course. So it's clear that mechanical life is just all push or pull. It's all yes or no. I like it and I don't like it. It's all attachment. It's all preference. There's absolutely nothing else to mechanical life other than trying to either achieve a goal or run away from an anti-goal, something that we don't want to be a goal. And this might seem in some ways reasonable enough, but just to remember that all of our goals aren't pictures of reality, they're mental projections coming out of our own inadequate, which is a very mild word, understanding of the situation. So we can't have goals unless we foolishly think we know what stuff is or what's happening or what could happen. So goals come out of this concrete mindset where we think we know what's going on. And as long as we think we know what's going on, we'll never know what's going on. So the whole gist of it is the whole gist of conscious work is to notice whether we have an agenda or not, whether we are pushing towards a goal or not, whether we're fleeing from a feared outcome or not. And this turns out to be a subtle kind of a thing, not just a little strategy that we do and bingo, Bob's your uncle, we get to be aware. It's a subtle thing because it requires us to be in the world in a way which we are not used to being in the world. So if I am to observe my aggression, I have to do this in a non-aggressive way. I can't have a goal of perceiving my own aggression, because if I have a goal, then automatically I'm going to strive to get things to accord with my goal. So that's resistance. That's struggling and striving. That's aggression. So if I'm aggressive to my own aggression, then of course I can't see my aggression for what it is because I'm too busy being aggressive. When I'm aggressive, all attention is on the outside. So either it's, look, there's a good thing, let's get it, let's move in on it. Oh no, there's a bad thing. Always on the outside. And what's on the outside is really, that's how thought manipulates us, by activating or latching onto our attention or triggering our attention in various ways with various dramas. So the world of dramas, the world of games, is the world of aggression. So in order to see aggression, I have to find some way of being in the world that is not aggressive. And there's no way to do that. There's no way to bring that about. But at the same time, it is very clear that often in our lives, there's a there's a tidal wave of aggression. There's a lot of aggression, and I can notice that. So I can notice the grosser examples of aggression. So I could start to notice all of that part of the spectrum. I won't see the subtler forms of aggression, but I'll be able to see the more gross variants. Like when I get upset. A situation didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. Something comes my way that I didn't want it to, or something eludes me that I wanted to happen and it doesn't happen. So all of these cause strong feelings of upset. And we call this lots of things, but really what it is the pain, frustration, irritation, despair, whatever, that comes about when we can't obtain our goal. So when we can't obtain our goal, normally all the effort goes into redoubling the efforts and trying harder and maybe playing a bit more clever, playing the game a bit more cleverly. The one thing we never do is use that feeling of dysphoria, the feeling of pain, the feeling of frustration and irritation and despair and being let down and all that whole spectrum of feelings, and taking an interest in that feeling. Because usually the feeling is kind of like a goad, it's like a sharp stick. So you stick me, you prod me with a sharp stick, and I jump and I do whatever it is I'm supposed to do. Which means my attention isn't on the sharp stick and what's going on when I'm being poked and who's poking me or why. My attention is doing whatever I need to do to stop being poked. My attention is on the outside, so I get poked really painfully, and it's like, do the thing or don't do the thing, either one or the other. And because I'm a conditioned being, I'm so used to being conditioned, my attention quickly jumps to the goal or what I don't want to have. As soon as I'm poked, that makes me more interested in playing the game, more interested in not losing the game, more interested in winning the game. But if we can flip this over, and this is where being subtle comes in, because it all happens very, very quickly. But if we can stay with it and be subtle enough, we'll see there's a moment where we can notice this feeling, of dissatisfaction or irritation or loss or anguish or whatever the hell it is, and stick with that feeling and just notice it. Notice what's going on. And if I can do that, if I can notice that I'm being goaded, that I'm being prodded, and yet not react to this, then I'm being conscious, then that is actual work. This in practice works out very well, because the more we practice, the more often we do it, the subtler we get and the better we get at it. Like the same as anything, like playing a musical instrument like a banjo or bagpipes or whatever. Once we stick at it, we cannot but improve at it. So we get to this situation where I'm still ruled by aggression, which is to say the reflex mind. Nothing's changed apart from the fact that I'm taking an interest in it, and I can actually see, instead of just always looking at the screen that I'm supposed to look at, I can see behind the scenes and I can see what's going on. I can see the mechanism at work. So I go through life exactly the same, only I'm no longer in the comfort zone of believing that I am my own master. How can I be my own master when I'm being manipulated by the reflex mechanism of the thinking mind? And this is absolute. I will see that I have no freedom. If I'm getting really, really cross, I can do one of two things. Be really, really cross and stamp around and do whatever kind of cross things that I might want to do, which is obviously the most common thing. Or I can notice the pettiness, because that's what it is, the pettiness, the immense smallness of me being upset because the thing I wanted to happen isn't happening, or whatever it is. And all the things that really do upset the everyday sense of self. They're petty. A long, long list of petty little things. We don't see how petty they are because we get fired up and we launch into the drama. So to see that, in reality, we're actually this small, being controlled by all these tiny, inconsequential, for the most part, inconsequential little things which cause our mood to go up and down and up and down, is not a comfort zone for us. It's not a pleasant experience, because what we're seeing clearly is that we are not the master. That we're seeing that we don't have any autonomy. And so the whole thing about this is, even though that's something we don't want to see, it's a painful thing to see, it's a very disheartening thing to say, possibly to see, we could say, because it's such bad news. It's like, oh no. But the paradox at the heart of this is that if we can see that we're not free, then we're actually free after all, because we're free to see that we're not free. We can only see anything when we're free. So to see anything, to see our aggression, means that we have become free from that aggression.